Hello and welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we've got episode 84. It's Thursday, September 4th, and after a while of not really having a lot of boxing events on, we've got a ton this weekend. In addition to the UFC returning off a 1 week hiatus with a huge main event, one I'm really excited for. So we're going to talk about all that today. We're going to preview it all, and we're going to talk about some news. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. So let's get it started with an event that's about to start pretty soon. As soon as this uploads, the card's going to get going. And that is, of course, Osleys Iglesias versus Vladimir Shishkin. This is an important fight for the super middleweight division. Two guys in the top 10, maybe top 15, but really high-stakes fight. This is not only the IBO World Championship, but it's also the IBF Final Eliminator. So it matters even more than normal final eliminators because the IBF will actually order the winner of this fight to fight Canelo Alvarez or whoever wins next week on Netflix between Canelo and Terrence Crawford. So this is a really, really important fight, one I'm really looking forward to. Osleys Iglesias is one of the true boogeymen of boxing. Nobody wants to fight this guy. This is, I think, his second or third attempt at getting an opponent for the IBF Final Eliminator. Nobody else wants to fight him. He is very, very dangerous, knocks out pretty much everyone in brutal fashion. Vladimir Shishkin on the other side is still a really good fighter. He gave William Skull a tough fight last year. A lot of people think that he won that and deserved to be world champion. So we haven't seen either of them fight in a while, and I do think this is the toughest test for both of them for sure. But I'm backing my boy Osleys Iglesias to win the belt, or to retain his IBO belt and to win the Eliminator and get next dibs on Canelo. I do think Iglesias is like number 3 in the super middleweight division. I think it's Canelo. Then I think Christian and Billy's a little bit ahead of him. And then I think it's Iglesias. It's hard to put Iglesias against a lot of people and say that he doesn't beat them. I actually kind of think that he may have the best chance out of anybody at 168 to beat Canelo just because he has this monster power. And as much as I do think that Shishkin is a good fighter, I just don't think that he's going to be as competitive against somebody like Iglesias. Who knows? He could outbox him. But I feel like Iglesias is going to knock him out the way he does everyone else. So we'll see. It's a really good card there. The Tiger cards usually are good. You got Dimitri Asanu versus Lei Douaudi, which I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but both these guys are undefeated. Asanu is a very good prospect turned contender, so excited to see him back. John Arobio, Moreno Fendero, Avery Martin Duval, stepping up to 10 rounds. A lot of good fighters on this card, and it should be a good night of boxing tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. You've also got this weekend the only world championship in boxing. I could be wrong, but I believe it is the only actual world title being held, and that is, of course, the homecoming defense of one Eduardo Sugar Nunez as he defends his belt against Christopher Pitufo Diaz. And I'll just be honest. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really, really don't like this title defense. I think it's an easy fight for Sugar Nunez. I think that Pitufo's not a bad fighter, but he just had a loss recently. And I don't see how he's had one, I think he had like an 8-round win earlier this year. I don't see at all how this deserves him a title shot, especially in 130, which is a division filled with a lot of names looking for titles. I mean, you can look at two other guys that match him themselves on their roster, Ray Ford and Rocky Hernandez, where Rocky Hernandez has worked his way up to a mandatory position with the WBC. I could be wrong, but I feel like he's been number 1 there for a bit. And then you've got Ray Ford over here, and Eddie's saying, yeah, I want to make Ray Ford versus Sugar Nunez. I think that's the best fight in the division. We've got the two best 130-pounders. And I'm like, dude, if you're saying this, then why aren't you making the fight? And even if you take Ray Ford out of it, Sugar Nunez is fighting tonight in his homecoming in Mexico. They sold a lot of tickets for this weekend, not tonight. Why don't you have Rocky Hernandez in there with him? Get another one of your guys a title shot, 2 Mexicans. I just think it's a huge missed opportunity, and I think this is an easy fight for Sugar Nunez. He definitely wins inside the distance. Just going to say that now. The co-main event I actually do think is quite interesting. Pedro Guevara versus Adrian Curiel. I do expect Guevara to get the win here, but Curiel he's shown he has upset potential. He did upset Sivanathan on Shinga a while back in a pretty crazy knockout. So who knows how this is going to go? But an important fight for the 115-pound division. Guevara wins this. He really could kind of get himself closer to another world title shot. So that should be a fun night in Mexico. I don't really love the opponent choice for Sugar Nunez, but after this, hopefully he can get on to bigger and better things and defend his belt against somebody more deserving or even unify. I would really love to see Ford versus Nunez, but I'm also totally fine with seeing like Sugar Nunez versus Emmanuel Navarrete. Are you kidding me? It's a phenomenal fight. But let's talk about UFC Paris. Nassourdine Imavov versus Caio Borralho. This fight is a number one contender fight for the middleweight championship. Whoever wins this is going to be the next guy to fight Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I don't know if they've actually explicitly said that, but I think we all know that this is who is going to get that fight. And this has got banger written all over it. As for who I think wins, I think that the Frenchman's going to win. I think that Caio Borralho, the original fighting nerd, I think he is a really good fighter. But I think the Imavov, dude, he's just got something to him where he's been on a very, very good run recently and is taking care of everyone pretty honestly without ease. I mean, so he's coming off, of course, he beat Israel Adesanya. Before that, it was Allen. Before that, it was Cannonier. Before that, it was Diaz. So, I mean, like, he hasn't lost a fight since Sean Strickland, which was about 2.5 years ago. And he's kind of ran through the division since then. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that this is a really, really good fight and one that I'm very much looking forward to. And I think Nassourdine Imavov is the next title challenger. Now, do I think either of these guys hold any kind of a chance against Khamzat? No, I don't. I think Khamzat is almost unbeatable. But I think that Imavov stands more of a chance than Borralho does. And I think he wins this fight. I don't know what fashion it's going to be in. It could be competitive. It could be an Imavov finish. Heck, it could be a Caio finish. But I do think Imavov is the favorite for a reason. Co-main event, another France versus Brazil matchup. Benoit Saint Denis versus Mauricio Rufy. I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm going to pick Rufy in this one. Again, could be wrong. These are really, really well-matched fights on top of this card. But that kick KO that we saw from Mauricio Rufy earlier this year was just something else, and I don't know if I've really seen anything that crazy from BSD. So I'm gonna go with Rufy to winning this fight, and but yeah, it should be good. Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig is on. Sorry, I was just checking to make sure because I know Paul Craig's last fight in Atlanta had a weird ending, and I don't know why I thought it was against Bukauskas. It wasn't. But this is a good fight. Excited for that one. Mason Jones, he obviously just upset Jeremy Stevens. He's going to be fighting Balaji Oki. Patricio Pitbull is on this card against Losane Kita. Interesting fight for him there. I'm hoping that he wins this one. They're trying to kind of rebuild him a little bit. Obviously, after he had a poor debut, but that Dan Ige win was decent, I thought. So he gets another good win here. He can get into some good fights at featherweight, but he's staying really active. Just fought a few weeks ago. And yeah, I mean, I think that this should be a very fun event overall. A lot of fights on it. And yeah, it should be a good one. Moving on over back to boxing, let's talk about the return of one Mick Conlan as he finally fights in Dublin. Apparently, he's never fought in Dublin before, which I find to be quite interesting, but he's taking on Jack Bateson. And yeah, this is a fight where it's going to, we're going to see, are you washed? Are you washed? Obviously, we've been saying for a while, like, yeah, Mick Conlan's washed, but this is his chance to prove it. Looking at Bateson, he's 21-1, so pretty solid record on the kid. Michael Conlan has lost 3 of his last 6 fights with obviously all 3 of those losses are against really good opposition. Lee Wood, Luis Alberto Lopez, Jordan Gill, and the wins are not up to that level. But I don't know, man. I think that Mick Conlan is not completely done. I don't think that it's necessarily like screaming for his retirement, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bateson took the victory here. I'm actually going to back Bateson. Why not? But hey, if Mick Conlan can get a win here, it looks really good for him. We know he was meant to fight Cristobal Lorente, who's now fighting Nathaniel Collins. Maybe he can somehow get the winner of that. But really, I would love to see him fight Josh Warrington, as we've never seen them fight before, and that is a very, very exciting fight. Hopefully Matchroom and Washington can make that. You got the return of Charlie Edwards on this card. I'm just hoping he doesn't stink up the whole arena like he did last time against Andrew Kane. That was a terrible fight, and he somehow actually, I think it was like a split decision, which he didn't deserve to win that at all. And then you got Ben Marksby versus Seanan Kelly, a battle of the undefeateds. That's actually a pretty good fight over 10 rounds. Dan Toward's back in action. Kieran Malloy's back in action. A lot of fights on this bill. Should be a fun night in Ireland. I'm looking forward to it. Another fight we have over in Europe, in the UK, in Sunderland, you've got the return of Pat McCormack. And now this fight is actually now going to be an official WBA welterweight eliminator. I think it's for the number 2 spot. I could be wrong, but whoever wins this is going to be in pretty good position to fight for that belt. Obviously held by Rolly Romero. Shakur Chimaev is still the mandatory, so those two are likely to fight soon. But then, hey, whoever wins this is going to be right there in line. This is a good step up for McCormack. Para is 25-5. Obviously has a lot of championship pedigree. He had a split decision loss to Shakur Chimaev, which sure he lost, but he gave Chimaev a good fight, and Chimaev is now mandatory. So we'll see, man. I do think McCormack obviously wins this fight, but this is his first fight, but above just purely British level. And, it's time to see if you can sink or swim. So I think McCormack takes this one, and this is kind of them introducing him to that world level, and he's no longer just going to fight Brits. He's going to go in and try and fight fights that make sense for his ranking. And it's interesting because he's only 7-0. He hasn't been a pro for terribly long. He just doesn't have as much pro experience, and it still feels like, oh man, we're rushing him. They're like, dang, they're getting him up there really fast. But then they're saying he should have been holding world titles by now, just because he's been plagued with injuries and inactivity. We know all that. I don't know. We haven't seen him really jump into a big fight. And obviously he's a huge amateur pedigree, but now it's time to see what he can do as a pro. And he's close to a world title shot now. So we'll see how it goes for him on Saturday night. Co-main event there, Mark Dickinson, Troy Williamson, which is a great fight. Mark Dickinson is coming off of a great win over Reese Farnhill. That was a really fun fight. Obviously, he did lose in the prize fighter tournament. And, he's never fought. This is definitely his biggest step up, I would say. I do think that he's the favorite. Obviously, Troy Williamson has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. So it doesn't look great for him. Granted, you look at Troy Williamson's losses: Jahai Tucker, Ishmael Davis, Keeman Najarko, Josh Kelly. So some pretty good names, and I think that all of those guys would beat Mark Dickinson today. So who knows? This is for the English Super Middleweight Championship. But I'm going to pick Dickinson, but be ready for an upset. That's a terrific fight. Sandy Ryan is back against Jade Grierson. I'm expecting that she takes that one. I do see that Grierson is 5-0. Sandy Ryan has a 7-3-1 record, which is really not representative of who she is as a fighter. She's a really, really great and talented fighter who's always in a fun fight, one of the most fun fighters to watch in women's boxing. She just had some bad luck on the scorecards against Michaela Mayer. That second fight she got dominated in. The first fight, I think that she could have gotten it. So we'll see how that goes, but good to see she's back. Cameron Vong is fighting TBA. I mean, we're 2 days out from the fight. Everybody else on this card, even all the guys fighting in 4-rounders have opponents. Adam Maka's got an opponent. TMA Ayton, Leo Watang. So some really fun prospects on here. I'm excited to see Leo Watang back. They're pushing him big. TMA Ayton had a huge professional debut as well. She's very impressive. So looking forward to that. But Cameron Vong, we're hearing that he's potentially going to be fighting Gavin Gwynn on the You Make Ben 2 undercard. I hope that they didn't pull him from this event, and he's still going to be doing this, quick little victory against a journeyman, but it's really odd to me they still don't have an opponent, and they're kind of jumping in between levels with him. They're having him in 10-rounders against guys like Gavin Gwynn, against Jordan Flynn, and now he's back down to an 8-rounder against TBA 2 days out from the fight. Just weird. Just a really weird situation. Another weird situation, kind of. Oscar Valdez returns this weekend. Hasn't fought in a bit. Obviously, his last fight was against one Emmanuel Navarrete. He's now going to be fighting back home in Mexico against Ricky Medina. And this is a comeback fight. But what's interesting to me about it, otherwise I don't know how much interest I'd really have in it. I am going to be watching it because now I know I'll be able to, because it's going to be on ESPN Deportes. Now, I know that there is a relationship between Zanfer Boxing, who is putting on this event in Mexico, and ESPN Knockout. I believe that that's kind of their main broadcast partner. But it's interesting just to see Top Rank, posting and saying check out Valdez versus Medina on ESPN Deportes. It's how we're going to be able to watch it here in the United States of America. And that's really interesting to me that there's still some kind of relationship there, even though we now know that broadcast deal has ended. They're not partners anymore. Top Rank is looking for a new partner, still does not have one. But hey, we'll see what goes on here. I think Valdez wins this fight, of course. If it doesn't, it looks really bad, and then it's going to bring up the washed conversation, and do we need to retire him? But, we'll see what happens on Saturday, and hopefully he puts in a fun performance and gets back into the big conversations at 1:30. Also this weekend, we have a very, very stacked Pro Box TV card. This one is going to be headlined by the one and only Jordan White as he takes on Rene Tejas Hiron. Look, I think that Jordan White is a pretty solid fighter. He's had some good performances as of late, but this is certainly a step up in competition. Rene Tejas Hiron is coming off of losses against Eduardo Hernandez, Floyd Schofield, but gave Schofield a really tough fight. He dropped him once or twice in that fight. Jordan White, though, has been coming off of a string of quality wins against some really good opponents. And, yeah, I mean, he hasn't lost since a 6-rounder, which was his 5th professional fight. And that was 8 years ago. So we'll see what happens in this fight, but I do really like it. I think it's a really solid step up. I'm going to back Jordan White to win it, but I would not be surprised at all at a setup an upset. Co-main event: Suleiman Sagawa versus Brian Acosta. Another terrific fight. This one I think is a true 50-50. I think both guys are going to bring it a lot. Brian Acosta's coming off of a nail biter against Ramon Cardenas. He was very close to winning that fight. Suleiman Sagawa coming off of a really great upset over Ruben Villa, and then a competitive fight against Bruce Carrington, where you can argue that he won that one as well. So, look, this guy has been having some quality wins. And not even just the wins. I mean, he's just been having really good performances as of late. So I think this is a tough fight. I'm going to favor Sagawa to take it because he does have a win over Sagawa. And, yes, he does have a loss to Carrington, but I tend to put a little bit more stock into the wins than the losses. So we'll see how this one goes, but I really like that fight. Also on this card, you have the return of Jonathan Cardoso as he takes on Luis Torres. This is another really good Pro Box TV fight. They've always got really interesting fights at the top of their card. I like that one a lot. That should be fun. Francois Scarborough Jr. is back in an 8-rounder. Elijah Flores. The return of Derek Scooter Davis. Jordan Roach is back as well. So some really, really fun prospects on this event. It's from Washington, D.C., so a lot of the guys in that DMV area are on this bill. And it should be a fun one. And then the last card that we'll talk about today that we've also got going on this weekend is a top-tier show on Sunday. And this is by far, I think you can say, the best top-tier card we've probably seen ever. It's going to be headlined by Tom Welland as he steps up a little bit. And he will be fighting Kevin Herrera, who holds a record of 11-3. So not a bad opponent. Tom Welland is always a really fun prospect to watch. And, he's back out over 8 rounds and his second main event on top tier. So that's fun. You've also got on that card Zach Fee versus Frankie Story, which is a 10-rounder for a Southern Area title at Super Bantamweight. That's a good fight. Muzamiro Kakande, who obviously holds the knockout over Dan Toward, fighting Kevin Revelle, who's always on the top tier shows. Another 10-rounder for a title. Another 10-rounder for a title, James Osborne versus Alex Branson Cole. And then you've got another 8-rounder, but this one also for a title, Harvey Smith and Josh Babb, another battle of undefeateds. Again, dude, top tier is actually putting on, in this card, I think they've got 5 title fights. They are all with pretty evenly matched fights, which is interesting because I feel like in the UK, especially on these small hall shows, they talk about evenly matched fights when they've got a guy who's like 10-0 against a guy who's like 4-8. And it's just like these are not competitive fights. These genuinely are. These are both A-side versus A-side, except for the main event. I do think Tom Welland takes care of Kevin Herrera. The rest of them, all these other fights, I'm like, you've got a favorite maybe, but these could all go either way. And I'm looking forward to that. So that's a good card. And we've got a lot of really good fights coming up this weekend. So it should be a fun weekend of combat sports. So that starts pretty soon tonight. But let's talk about some news. So we did hear apparently Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez negotiations are making progress for January. Now, we had heard that this fight, the potential of it started on Twitter a few days ago. And, a lot of smack. And, it seemed like, okay, this fight's not happening. Shakur saying Teo refused it. Then he's saying, oh, I didn't. And now they're both kind of saying to each other, looking like the deal's in a good spot. Saying like, hey, he signed, like not saying he signed the contract, but both of them putting out emojis and stuff, making it seem like they are actually closing in on having a legitimate contract being signed and then fighting each other in January. We did hear Shakur say a while back that his next fight is planned for January. One to Lamont Roach, also wants Teofimo Lopez. Looking like Teo and him are in positive spot with the negotiations. I'm still not going to start celebrating. I still think that this fight probably falls through just because A lot of these fights do, and I don't want to point fingers, but I feel like Teofimo Lopez is often the culprit. I don't think we see Shakur pull out of a lot of fights. I don't think we see Devin Haney pull out of a lot of fights. I don't think we see Ryan Garcia pull out of a lot of fights. I think that we see Teofimo Lopez pull out of a lot of fights. And I also want to say Tank Davis, but Tank Davis doesn't pull out of fights because he never even enters negotiations for them. So I would love to see it happen. I'm a little bit curious what the weight class is. Obviously, this would have to be at 140, you would think. Shakur says he's fine with staying at 135, and he's definitely smaller than Teo. So, and then again, you've also got Teo wanting to move up to welterweight, so who really knows? But hopefully negotiations can stay in a good spot, and we can get this fight made because it would be a super fight. A deal has been reached for Opetaia versus Huseyin Cinkara. We're hearing this fight's going to be in November in Australia. Mick Francis today said they're targeting Sunday, November 2nd. Justice Hooney's going to be on this card. They didn't explicitly say that, but we just know he is because Eddie said he's coming back in November, and they have an Australia show in November, so he'll be on there. Tara Moana will be on there. Look, I mean, it sucks that Jai cannot fight Zurdo right now because that is the only fight I'm interested in seeing him in, and we're not going to get that. But this is okay, because you know you're going to have to defend against your mandatory at some point. It got called. Let's do the fight now. And this way, when Zurdo is ready after this fight, after November, you can jump right into that one. You guys both just did your mandatory, and you're not going to get ordered for any other fights. Don't take another fight. Just fight each other finally, please. I'm begging you. Moving on from that. Another purse bid, I guess you could say this one was a deal was reached before purse bid. Fresh Productions have outbid Matchroom for Subriel Matias Dalton Smith rights. So this is a fight that we were hearing that they were trying to get it on the Saudi Arabia show. That did not happen, and it had to purse bids, and Matchroom didn't even bid enough to win it, which is a little bit disappointing just from them as a promotion. But, I mean, it's okay if this fight happens in Puerto Rico. We know the Puerto Rican judges will say it as it is. Liam Paro took the belt from Matias just 2 years ago, or 1 year ago there. So we know that they can be trusted. I'm okay with it. It's not a huge deal to me, but it is definitely a bit surprising that Fresh Productions, who I've never really heard of, I thought it would be Salida in here, but I guess that they're the more primary promoters of Subriel Matias, and then Salida's like a co-pro. That they were able to outbid Matchroom Boxing, who's arguably the biggest and most global boxing organization. It's just weird that they didn't try harder, but I don't know. At least we're still getting the fight. Conor McGregor has officially announced that he's running for president in Ireland. It's very funny, isn't it? Yeah. He's not even popular over there. I've heard that the Irish people don't really like McGregor anymore he's been so controversial in recent years that he's kind of been losing public favor. So he obviously would never stand a chance to win the election anyways. But this is just silly and kind of a waste of his time. He's just doing side quests and has been for the past 4 years. And I don't know if he's going to fight again because every week he's got something new he's doing. It's crazy. Jaime Munguia has been cleared to fight again with no sanction or consequence, essentially. I didn't read the finer details of it, but it looks like nothing's really going to happen to him. And obviously he beat Bruno Saras in the rematch. I don't know how much the PEDs played a part in that. Not a fart, excuse me. I'm going to leave that in because it's funny. But, I'm just a little bit disappointed that there was no severe consequence against him. I mean, when you've got somebody doing that like Jose Felix, who was obviously on PEDs and he lost to a Brit in the BBBFC, he got banned there for 5 years. And then Munguia does it in a world-level fight and wins and no consequence, like at all? I don't know. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Boxing is just so broken with this kind of stuff, and it's disappointing to see. Deontay Wilder says he wants to fight for 10 more years. Another thing that was just absolutely hilarious, he did call out Francis Ngannou. If they're both down to make that fight, let's do it. That's a great fight for both because they're both on the tail ends of their careers, and Ngannou's 0-2 as a fighter. Deontay Wilder is 2 for 6 in his last few fights. So yeah, neither of them are really on a good run. So I'd be fine if they end up fighting each other. Wilder saying he wants to fight for 10 more years actually does kind of worry me. Because obviously I know that everybody says, I want to be a world champion again. He's saying he wants to be undisputed. But you would hope that somebody around them is telling them, dude, you are you got like 1-2 max fights left in you. They cannot let Deontay Wilder fight until he's 49 years old. Like, there's somebody around him needs to stop him, whether it's his wife, whether it's his coach, who he's now left Malik Scott, whether it's Shelly Finkel. Somebody needs to stop this at some point and say, dude, come on, go home. Speaking of retirement, Keyshawn Davis says retirement is so peaceful. He's just talking, and maybe he means he's retired right now. Just the other episode, we were talking about how he had been requested to be the number one mandatory at 140 pounds for Teofimo Lopez. He is not retired. He's on a break right now because his last fight week was such a disaster. They didn't even end up fighting, so he needs some time to kind of reflect and do a little bit of Ryan Garcia-ing and course correcting. And then he can come back, but he's not retired. We'll see him fight again. Probably in the first half of 2026, I would hope. But yeah, he's just going to be out for a while. We're hearing that Brandon Royval Manel Kape has been rebooked for December 13th in the Apex, and that will be the final UFC card of the year. That's a really good fight for the Apex. This fight was meant to happen in June as a title eliminator. That is, of course, no longer going to be the case as Joshua Van stepped in on like a week's notice and beat Royval for that crown. But hey, this one will still push him right back into that contention. Maybe the winner of this will end up fighting for the title after Josh Van fights Alexandre Pantoja. So that's a good fight. Also being pegged for December 13th is the return of Moses Atalma, saying that he's going to be fighting in Manchester. Good that he's going to get another fight in this year because they really need to keep him more active. He's, how many rounds has he fought in 2025? I think 3. You just need to get in more fights. Frank Warren said he's open to the Filip Hrgović fight if the cut heals. That's a little bit of a quick turnaround for such a big cut like that and such a high-volume fight like he had with Adelaide. So I think that he may not be ready for it. And if not, that's okay. You can get him another fight. I would love it to be Hrgović. That's what I've been saying since the Atalma fight and even before it, is that Atalma Hrgović is next and or should be next. And we're hearing that's a possibility, but it just depends on this cut. But December 13th, I don't know if it's going to be ready. So get Jermaine Franklin ready on the phone. Who were some of the other guys? They had some other guys that they were talking about fighting, but they'll get him a good opponent. I'm hopeful at least. Tenshin Nasukawa versus Takuma Inoue are apparently in negotiations for a WBC bantamweight vacant title fight in November. Obviously, Junto Nakatani is vacating both his WBC and IBF world titles at 118 pounds. Takuma Inoue, former champion there. Tenshin Nasukawa, hugely legendary kickboxing career, and has come over into boxing the last few years and done really, really well for himself. I think he's 7-0 now. So he's looking. We know he's been waiting for his world title shot, and he hasn't fought. I mean, obviously, he's got the win over Maloney, which was very, very impressive, I thought. But other than that, hasn't had a huge win, I wouldn't say. But, there was talks about him fighting Yoshiki Takei for the longest time. But now it's sounding like it's going to be him and Takuma Inoue fighting for a vacant belt. That's a really good fight. I think Takuma could be harder than Takei to beat, but I actually would maybe even favor Tenshin in that fight just because I think he's been really impressive in boxing so far. So we'll see how that one goes, but it should be a banger. Rafael Espinoza is returning in Mexico in November on a Zanfer boxing show. So again, Top Rank's guys are just not going to be active, but because Top Rank does not have a broadcast deal. But it's good to see that they're at least going to try and keep them active while they're still looking for a place. Just the other day, we had the press conference for Fundora and Thurman, and Shockey Foster was there, of course, on a PBC card. And now, obviously, Espinoza will be back to defend his featherweight world title in November. And it's cool they're going to bring him back home to Mexico. I hope he does a good crowd wherever he does end up fighting in that country. I'm curious who he's going to fight. 130, like I said, is a really good division. Or excuse me, not 130, 126. So there's a lot of names for him to potentially take on. Honestly, it's probably not a good idea, but I'd kind of like to see him fight Luis Alberto Lopez. They're both top-ranked fighters, and they wouldn't do that because you don't want to. Lopez would not be the favorite in that fight, and you want to get Lopez a route back to the title that doesn't involve him fighting somebody like Espinoza. You could do Espinoza Carrington. That's another top rank versus top rank fight, but or even Espinoza versus Leo. Top rank just has everyone, I feel, in that division. But yeah, we'll see. I hope Espinoza can still get a good title defense because he is the best fighter in that division, and he's just quality TV every single time. We talked a minute ago about Tenshin and Takuma fighting for the belt just vacated by Junto Nakatani, who has now been installed as the number one challenger with the WBA at 122 pounds. Obviously, he's moving up there, and look, if they're going to just put him into the rankings, he absolutely deserves to be at number one, even though he's never had a fight there. So I'm like, but I do think he is the second best guy in that division now behind Inoue. Number two in those WBA rankings is Ramon Cardenas. And those two have been linked to fight on this December Saudi card. And everyone's saying that that's kind of the fight that they expect Nakatani to take as he begins his quest at 122 pounds. And look, you make that a WBA final eliminator, 1 versus 2. Obviously, Nakatani's probably going to beat him. And then he's mandatory to fight Naoya Inoue. I already see the seeds, everything falling into place, and that is what's going to happen. And I'm really excited for that. We talked a minute ago about this Pro Box card and Jordan Roach returning. His brother, Lamont Roach Jr., you may have heard of him, is apparently now in negotiations with Pitbull for a fight in December in California after he turned down the Gabriel Flores Jr. fight. Yeah, we heard that was on the table. I think he turned that one down. I'm guessing probably the money wasn't there because it wasn't a big a fight, or it was just that he didn't want something like that because, again, it wasn't a very big fight, but Pitbull is a big name, and that is a really interesting fight. My only question is, what are we doing with PBC and putting fighters in different weight classes? I mean, like, seriously. Because Lamont Roach is a 130-pounder who got brought up to 135 to fight Tank by PBC. Pitbull is a 140-pounder, but even then he was only brought up to 140 by PBC to fight Rolly Romero. I feel like, and now they're bringing Fulton up to fight Foster. They brought Charlo up to fight Canelo. I mean, I just feel like this is their bread and butter, is just bringing up and down guys to fight. And, I would have to assume that Pitbull would be coming back down to lightweight, even though he just became WBC interim champion at 140. The fight just doesn't make sense to me on a sense of weight classes. Obviously, the fight itself could be really interesting and a lot of fun. But in terms of actually making sense for a weight division, it just doesn't. We are hearing that Callum Simpson versus William Skoll is apparently now in negotiations for December 5th. I guess this would mean, and this would be in the UK, I'm guessing this would be the second boxer show of the year. And obviously, if that Fraser Clark Jamie TKV fight still happens, it's no longer going to happen on September 27th per reports after that fight was never announced. And we're less than a month away from that. So I don't know what's going to happen with that card. If that's ever going to happen, but it should be coming up pretty soon. But as for this fight, I'm actually really interested by it. Obviously, we were also hearing that Callum Simpson could be fighting Hamza Shiraz on the Eubank Ben undercard. If that's not going to happen, I would love to see him fight William Skoll, who just fought Canelo. I think that's a huge step up. And even though William Skoll sucks and I don't want to watch him on TV, if Callum Simpson can beat him, that's going to say a lot. Because especially if Callum Simpson can stop him, that's going to say a lot because Canelo couldn't stop him. And I don't know, man. I mean, I think that could be really huge for him, and that'd be a great step up. So I see what they're trying to do there with that fight, and I like it. I do think that Boxer and Ben Shalom are good at matchmaking fights that they know they'll win, but they'll put the name on the resume and it'll look good. I mean, look at what they did with Adam Azim fighting Sergey Lipinets and O'Hara Davies when they're both completely washed, but they can argue and say, oh, we've beaten better guys than Dalton Smith has, even though Dalton Smith has put himself into the position for a mandatory world title and Adam Azim is not. So, it is what it is, but I would not be opposed to this fight at all. And then lastly, we'll close up talking about these Misfits pound-for-pound rankings. I think they're overall pretty good. Number 1, Darren Till. 2, Tommy Fury. 3, KSI. 4, Gibb. 5, Chase Demore. I get he has the title, but he should not even be on this list at all, and it's kind of gross that they have him at 5 above all these other guys. It's stupid. 6, Anthony Taylor. 7, Lil Cray Cray. 8, Tony Ferguson. Saw Puppy's not on the list at all. 9, you're tied between Jarvis and Dean the Great. I feel like Dean could be a little bit higher. No Slim on here. I don't know if he's left Misfits, but the most interesting part, and while we're talking about it, number 10, Andrew Tate. Now, everybody else on this list has fought for Misfits in the past, if not recently. Andrew Tate is the only one who's not, and this comes just days after us talking about Andrew Tate potentially being in talks to fight on Misfits. Look, I'm just saying that may point a lot of fingers to say maybe this is true. Maybe Andrew Tate's going to fight on Misfits later this year. And this deal is looking like it is in place. And I would love to see that. I think that's the perfect home for him. If they can get him a good fight, I hope he doesn't fight a tin can because I know he would probably want to. But if they can get him to fight someone like Darren Till, sign me up. But it is interesting that they injected him into the rankings without a proper fight, especially when you have Jarvis and Dean the Great tied for number 9 when you could just have one of them at 10. You wanted Andrew Tate on this list. So that's really, really interesting to me. And yeah, we're going to see what happens with him in the coming months and if he does fight on the next Misfits show. And I'm looking forward to the next Misfits card whenever it is because the last one was great. But, hey, that's all I've got for today. Enjoy the fights this weekend. I'll do another episode hopefully on Sunday, later in the day after the Top Tier show. If not, it'll be on Monday. But thank you all so much for listening. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the fights. And, yeah, we're going to switch over to Iglesias Shishkin right after you watch this or probably during. All right. Thanks for listening. Peace out.